episode 4 of the Detours in Music podcast. My name is Laura Ruppel, and today we have an interview with Dr. Megan Steigerwald Ille, Assistant Professor of Musicology at the University of Cincinnati College Conservatory of Music. I hope you enjoy.
My name is Megan Steigerwald Ille, and I am an Assistant Professor of Musicology educator at the Conservatory College of Music, University of Cincinnati.
Great. Can you talk about your start in music?
Sure. I came to music, as I think probably a lot of people do, through elementary school band class. I played the clarinet, and I wanted to play the oboe, but it wasn't allowed in the fourth grade, and probably rightly so.
Yep.
I just fell in love with the instrument. I really enjoyed symphonic repertoire. I remember playing in a youth orchestra and playing Night on Bald Mountain for the first time, and just really loving the power and excitement of playing that kind of repertoire, the sense of community from playing in an orchestra or band, that kind of thing. And I really loved singing, but it wasn't something I was particularly good at. And as I got older, I continued to play the clarinet and started taking voice lessons and learned how to become better at that second modality. And then by the time I got to college, to my undergrad, I ended up pursuing a voice major rather than a clarinet major. So it kind of worked out in the end, but for me at least, but I play the clarinet now and then for fun. And I still love the memories. I really cherish my memories of playing in an orchestra versus singing with an orchestra, that kind of thing.
That can give you kind of good experience as a chorus member when you are playing or singing with an orchestra. I'm sure you have more perspective.
Certainly. And I think it helps. It certainly helps as a singer, because I feel like singers so often don't get quite as much rhythmic exposure, if that makes sense,
yes,
as compared to instrumental players, just because there are fewer. I mean, even if a singer is singing melismatic passages, quite often they are always going to encounter, or most of the time going to just encounter, fewer notes, right? Less repertoire, at least in the early stages of their training. I have to be careful because I have a lot of respect for both singers and instrumentalists. And so because of that, I think kind of bringing that sensibility to my singing has been something that I've always really enjoyed. I think it's part of the reason I enjoy certain examples of Baroque repertoire, because I feel like I get to kind of engage that instrumental, almost like obligato side of my brain as a singer more often with that kind of repertoire. I'm really grateful to kind of have had the foundation in both of those spaces. And I think they really inform one another for me, certainly.
What made you realize you wanted to pursue music at the college level? If you were back and forth between two different kind of majors, they might not have been the main reason you were going, or what was your motivation?
Yeah. I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to be a surgeon.
Okay.
When I went to college, and I got into biology lab, and I realized that was not for me. I was just taking lessons, taking music theory on the side so I could have free lessons. And I missed making music being a part of the fabric of all days for me. I felt like I really missed the structure and the community. I was very involved in marching band in high school and was a drum major and that kind of thing. So it was very abrupt going from the kind of choral, musical theater, orchestral band world of high school for me into college, and not having that be as big a part of my life. And I had chosen a very small women's college, actually, for the reason because I wanted to become a surgeon, and they had a great science program, or pre-med program rather. But luckily there was also some really strong music faculty at that school at Randolph-Macon Women's College. And so I ended up pursuing that, and I really loved close reading and writing and literature. So I decided to pursue an English literature degree at the same time. And I think that kind of speaks to where I ended up, which is musicology.
Where did you attend school and why? I guess you talked about why you attended Randolph-Macon, but maybe beyond that.
Sure. Yeah. So I chose Randolph-Macon partially because I really believed in the power of single sex education and the way in which single sex education made space, especially for people who identify as female in the classroom and that kind of thing. That really meant a lot to me and still does. Um, and so that's part of the reason why I chose Randolph-Macon. I was also very excited by their study abroad program. I studied abroad at the University of Reading in the UK, and the possibilities of that, especially as someone interested in English literature. That was really exciting for me. So those were the main reasons I chose Randolph-Macon. And then I chose to go to James Madison for my master's degree in performance because of a teacher I wanted to work with there, Dorothy Madison, no relation to James. And then also, frankly, because it was funded. And that was a great opportunity for a performance degree to be funded and to have the experience of performing and TAing at the master's level. So it really gave me a great foundation that I use as a musicologist and that I used in my second master's and my PhD. And then I chose to go to Eastman for several reasons, partially obviously because of the faculty and the caliber of the musicologists there. Also because it was a place where I could see myself continuing to perform even peripherally. I could see venues where I could continue to take lessons, where I could continue to take. I did some chamber music performance there. I took some courses in opera direction there, and opera performance, and so that was just really a wonderful opportunity for me. And that's why I chose Eastman. Yeah.
That's so cool. Can you talk about something you struggled with in your undergraduate degree? For you, it could be deciding to go into music, I guess.
Yeah. For me, it was not even so much deciding to go to music. It was deciding, period. Deciding, especially, I remember a lot of fear during my senior year, not knowing what I wanted to pursue. For a long time, it was very hard to let go of the clarinet. I thought I wanted to do a double performance major and an English degree. So clarinet voice and English literature, and that was a little bogus. But it was just really hard to let go of this instrument that had really done so much for me and given me so much. But for me, it was realizing I wanted to practice voice for many hours a day, and I didn't want to practice clarinet for many hours a day. That was a really helpful kind of way to sort of say goodbye to that version of what I thought maybe my life would be. But yeah, I think one of the hardest decisions was figuring out what the next step was after graduation. And what helped me make that decision was getting into JMU, was having the funding available and kind of saying, okay, this is the step I'm going to take next. I think we put so much pressure on ourselves, especially when we're in that kind of like 21 to 25-year-old space of knowing what we'll do for the rest of our lives, when really the truth of it is like taking the next step is the next best thing. Something I teach in writing. I teach, is it Anne Lamott? I'm looking for the book. Her concept of the idea of like bird by bird, like when you're writing a project, you should just move like bit by bit, and that's how you do it. And less prosaically, I believe the song in Frozen 2 it's called like the next best thing or the next right thing. But it's really the same concept. And I think moving to the next best thing or the next right thing was really what helped me get where I am today, and also get to enjoy a lot of other career possibilities earlier on. So I'm really grateful for that indecision now, but at the time it felt incredibly overwhelming.
I think for a lot of people that listen, they are like myself in that stage of not knowing what we want to do next or not knowing what the right thing to do is. But I think that is very good advice to just take things day by day. And like even what you were saying with, I wanted to practice voice more than I wanted to practice clarinet. It's noticing like the little things that can add up and make the decisions easier or harder.
Yeah. And it's funny, I was looking ahead at the questions and there was one about like, not to jump, I'm like, feel like
okay.
I'm interviewer's prerogative, but there was one about like moments when you figured out something or that kind of thing. And for me, a lot of the figuring out I did about deciding to pursue the PhD and follow musicology was out of when I worked as an au pair in Vienna for 2 years after my master's degree. And during that time, I did a lot of free writing and thinking about what I wanted my days to look like, what I wanted my professional career to look like in terms of like work-life balance. A lot of those questions that I brought up at the very end of CRTM last semester. And that was really how I started to make that decision of like going into scholarship versus pursuing predominantly a performance career. And so I completely agree with you. It's like sometimes you just have to notice the small things and make the decision based on the small things, and then the big things will follow, or you'll change paths, and that's okay too. When things aren't going as expected, I'm going to take like a big picture kind of idea. Know that it's okay to change, that it's okay to change paths. It's okay to kind of think about yourself as having multiple careers, even in the first half of your life. When I started my PhD, I kind of thought to myself, okay, I am getting paid this fellowship or this teaching assistantship essentially to get my doctorate and be a scholar right now. And maybe the market will be awful after I'm done and I won't be able to get a job, but that means I still got to have 5 years of being paid to be a scholar. And that's really cool. And then I'll see what happens next. So kind of knowing that you are already a person who does whatever you do. You are not what you do, if that makes sense. I saw a thing in the New York Times recently about trying to describe your profession as what you do versus what you are. So like rather than saying I'm a professor, I should say something like I write, research, and teach. And that kind of separates who I am, Megan, from or Dr. Steigerwald or whatever, from what I just do to get paid and what drives me, of course, but like there's more to all of us than the thing that we do as our profession. And I think as musicians, especially as performers, the two get conflated so much because performers are asked to give so much of their time and their personal lives. They're asked to sacrifice so much in order to achieve X career. So I would say that would be another piece of advice, is remember that what you do is not who you are.
Yeah.
That's so hard though, especially when you're in school, I think.
Yes.
You're trying to figure out what the next thing is, and you don't maybe have as many clear boundaries. I think another piece of advice, I was looking over the quotes that you shared, and the Benjamin Britten quote about why would you stay up all night? You should be sleeping rather than working. It made me think a lot about how to create boundaries as a performer, as someone in academia, as someone who's pursuing a career where work-life balance is often challenging. Finding ways to create that structure and balance, I think, will go very far. Even if it's you as a performer saying like, I'm going to work and practice and think about what I do from 8 to 4 every day or 9 to 5. And then I'm going to stop and I'm going to just pretend like I have a 9 to 5 job and make the evening my time to be a person. I think that kind of thing can actually make you more productive and help you be like mentally healthier too.
Yes. I remember reading in a book, I think it was like toughness training for sports, but I was recommended to read it for music. And in it, they talk about like a 50-50 balance of work and like personal life. And I remember like my jaw dropped, I think, because I was like, wait, the balance is supposed to be half? Like that just like blew my mind.
That just made my jaw drop a little bit.
I know.
Too. I was like, wait, what?
And I mean, I don't think that's possible, but I just remember looking at that being like, is that what some people can get? Or is that like the goal? Because I think in my mind, I was like, it'd be nice to have 80-20 or something.
Yeah, exactly. I completely understand. And I think thinking of those boundaries, I mean, I have a partner who's not in music and not in academia. And I think that has been a helpful model sometimes to see how people can both work very hard, but also have boundaries between their work and their identity, and that's very healthy.
Yeah. What would you be doing if you were not a musician?
I liked this question when I read it. I think I would have really enjoyed maybe being a physical therapist or an occupational therapist. I love exercising. I really love running. And maybe because I'm a vocal practitioner and I'm also a runner who gets hurt a lot, I've learned a lot about anatomy and physiology. I love Alexander technique, all that stuff. So I think I would really enjoy that kind of a job. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe being a lawyer, like an environmental lawyer or something.
Yeah. Looking back, have you changed your career focus in your professional life?
I think certainly shifting to musicology from performance, that would be a major career focal shift.
Mm-hmm.
But in a way, it feels like those things kind of live together for me because so much of my research and work deals with the contemporary opera industry
Mm.
and more broadly, the classical music industry in the United States and sometimes Canada. And so now it feels very holistic, but I think that's important because I think that shows us how the changes we make in our life might feel very abrupt and dramatic, and they are, right? It's really different. I spend many hours a day writing now when I used to spend many hours a day practicing, but in some ways, in many ways, the core of who I am and what I do has really stayed the same.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just looking at it from different angles now and experiencing it from different angles. But that would certainly be one of the most dramatic shifts, I would say, was realizing, oh, no, I really want to go back and I want to get a doctorate in an academic discipline, and I want to teach, and I want to be in that kind of university ecosystem in that way. Another shift for me would be realizing how important research was to me. I think because I went into the PhD thinking that I would very much want to teach. And of course, I would do research, but teaching would be my the main thing that drove me. I still feel like that, but I feel like research is equally important to me now in ways that I perhaps couldn't articulate 7 or 8 years ago.
Is that sort of how you would define the detours of your life? Are the moments where you're kind of expanding on who you already are, but changing the mode of
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a really neat way of framing it. I don't think I would have put it as beautifully as you just did, but I think that's a really nice way of thinking about it. I guess another obvious detour would be moving to Vienna and working as a nanny. That was certainly a detour, but it felt like the right place. And it's where I made a lot of decisions about what I wanted next.
Mm-hmm.
It made me realize that, I mean, I worked for a lovely family, but it made me realize that I wasn't willing to sacrifice every aspect of control over my life just to be living in a beautiful city abroad,
Mm-hmm.
and getting to go to the opera every night. I mean, that was wonderful, but I really missed a lot of the things that I have in my life now, like that time to engage with written materials, that time to engage with students, that ability to get to learn and grow from lots of different arenas. I feel like that's what I get to do, maybe because of my area of research in particular.
Mm-hmm.
My days are really different in certain ways that I really enjoy.
What brought you into the job you're in today?
What I've already said about really discovering, like, oh, this is how I want the micro, like this is how I want my days to look, and the macro, these are the things I'd like to achieve in this stage of my life. This is what's going to drive me and make me feel excited to work every day. That's kind of how I came to the goal of being a professor. My time at WashU as a postdoc was very influential in terms of helping me contextualize my research from a different angle, because I was in an American Culture Studies program at WashU. So I got to learn so much from all of these incredible interdisciplinary thinkers and scholars. That was incredibly influential, I think, in the way I'm thinking about my current book project. And that time at WashU, I think, really solidified my passion for research, and my excitement for that. One of the reasons I really love working at CCM is I think I really enjoy the conservatory environment. It feels ironic to say that right now because I have only been to CCM twice at this point, the physical building itself. But when I decided to accept this position, that excitement over that kind of environment, similar to what I experienced at Eastman, students who were wonderful players and also wonderful thinkers, getting to be a part of that, I think is really exciting and fun. It's a very specific kind of environment that I feel like, because of my experiences, I can at least partially kind of speak to and empathize with some of the harder aspects or more challenging aspects of I would say, the environment, I guess. But then I also have a lot to kind of grow and learn from as well. So yeah.
What are your goals right now for your job or your field in general?
Man, that's a great question. In terms of my goals for the field, I think we need to continue to develop opportunities for PhDs in the humanities to find work outside of higher education. That's a real priority for me. That's not something I'm as knowledgeable about as I would like to be, though, because I've kind of been in this track, this system. And I think the more I can learn about what I can do to support especially our PhD students in musicology, and helping them kind of in the field more broadly, helping them see the different paths that they can take. I think that's incredibly important. Another real goal I have is learning how to and creating space to develop the voices of Black, Indigenous, and people of color in the classical music industry. That's an incredibly important priority for me. That's something I see a little more than a little bit in my own work on contemporary opera, engaging with some recent productions that really foreground the experience of people who are historically underrepresented, especially in the opera industry, but learning how to do that more and bringing that on the more like granular level to my work in Cincinnati, I think is a real goal for me over the next few years. So those would be some goals for the field. In terms of my own research goals, I'm currently working on a book called Opera for Everyone, Experimenting with American Opera in the Digital Age. That's under contract with the University of Michigan Press. And so completing that manuscript is a real goal for me right now.
I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you. I will take all the luck I can get, Laura.
That's awesome.
This has been great, Laura. I appreciate you doing this.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, this is very cool. I feel like I have like many years of the seasons of this podcast that I need to listen to now. I was just, as we were talking about some of the people you've already talked to who were actually real inspirations for me during my time at JMU. I think it's always really important to give credit where credit is due. So Mary Jean Spear and John Gibson did so much for me when I was making a decision about where I was going and what I'd be doing. So yeah, I appreciate you doing this.
That's really cool. I hope you enjoyed that interview with Dr. Steigerwald. I certainly enjoyed our conversation, and even though I was in her class all last semester, neither of us had put together until, I guess, this week that we are both alumni of James Madison University. And if you are a longtime listener of the podcast, you know that my first 30 or so episodes interview professors from JMU. So I'm excited that she now has that maybe to look back on and to hear where those people are today. If you'd like to keep up with the podcast, there are multiple ways you can do so. First of all, you can go to our website, which is detoursinmusicpodcast.weebly.com. You could also subscribe to our YouTube channel, also called Detours in Music Podcast. We also have a Facebook page and Instagram account where you can like and follow us. The Detours in Music Podcast is available everywhere that you listen to podcasts, but on Apple Music podcast apps, you can subscribe and rate us. If you ever want to get in touch with me and give more direct feedback, you can email me at detoursinmusicpodcast@gmail.com. As always, thank you for listening, and I hope you catch the next one.